Hello, my name's Tommie C, and you've tuned into More Than a Game. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of our new content as it arrives. If you're a new or a regular listener to our podcast, though, please give us a recommendation, a review, or a follow on whatever it is that you listen to podcasts on. It's really appreciated whenever we get feedback, good or bad, from our followers. This week on the show, Frank the Fraud or Solskjaer the Swindler? Who was luckier overnight? Brighton are too busy playing crossbar challenge to win a football match. Chelsea try to fix their Kepa problem. And we'll announce our FBL prizes for this season. Also, we'll be doing a bit of a tour around Europe with some little tidbits from Estonia and the Netherlands in the weird and wonderful world of football. But first up, we've got an introduction to make. We've got a new panelist for this week. Scotty, welcome to the pod. It's great to have you on board.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
So Scotty, this is actually the first time we've really crossed paths. You're one of I guess the pod through Jesse, through playing outdoor together, or trying to play outdoor together if it weren't for the coronavirus. But look, mate, tell us a little bit about who you follow and why in the world of football.
Yeah, so hopefully you can still tell from my accent that I'm British. Hasn't lost that completely. I'm a West Ham fan. My whole family is, both on my mum and dad's side. My granddad was part of their academy when he was very young, before he went off to national service. And my parents ended up doing steward duty there in their time as police. So got a fair history with the club. Through all of their trials, I've never seen them win a cup or anything, but it's always good fun to persevere, try. All the old memories of Upton Park, and I was there for a season of the new stadium as well, which is different. Was meant to lead us into the promised land, and here we are.
Yeah, and I guess that's maybe a good point, I guess, for us to stop, because in the future, towards the end of the pod, we'll be talking a little bit more about West Ham's match against Wolves this week. But also, I guess it's great to have you on the pod so I can bounce some questions off you about sort of some of the problems with the club at the moment and where they're going wrong and where they should be headed as well. So looking forward to that. Jesse will finally understand what it's like to listen to two people talking about his club for 40 minutes.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it.
Scotty, before we move on, though, I've got to ask one thing. You mentioned that both your parents and even another generation after that were all West Ham fans. Did your parents have a West Ham-themed wedding?
They did not have a West Ham-themed wedding. I think my granddad would have loved it, but my mum, although she is a West Ham fan, I don't think the rest of the family would have been so keen.
Fair enough, mate. All right. Jesse, you're obviously completing the panel this week. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. I was just thinking about a West Ham wedding. You'd have to have a lot of dishwashing detergent for all those bubbles. But this week, boys, I'm part of a West Ham sandwich. I'm in a bit of a pickle, as you can see. But enough with the cheesy jokes. Let us continue. And on that note, shall we push on?
We shall. All right. Jesse, have you got a moment of the week, mate?
Yeah, it was a bit of a difficult one, finding a moment of the week. I mean, I know that we've only sort of seen the first chunk of the fixtures, so there hasn't been, apart from the Carabao Cup, which of course is our favourite competition, there hasn't been too much to talk about this week. But Libby Kakache made his debut, I think, overnight for, I think it's St. Troyden. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the Belgian Pro League. They lost 2-0, but from all accounts, he had a good game. So that's great for New Zealand football. He's finally started for them, and wish him all the best for the season. So that's really cool. Good feedback from the club, seemingly. Apart from that, I think just we'll touch on it in a little while, but the Mope life comes at you fast situation last night. Probably best when it's the first half and you've only sort of gone up by one goal to sort of just calm down and not do the tear face. Basically, that's only going to end badly if the other team goes down the other end and scores, and that's exactly what happens. So, unfortunately for Mope, rest in peace.
Well, look, mate, I made a pretty similar mistake. I thought the game was over when the referee blew full time, but I mean, it's easy to make that mistake.
Happens to the best of us.
Scotty, mate, what about you? What stood out to you this week?
I say it's not necessarily this week, but I read a reading article which it seems to have come out that the most marketable club on FIFA are currently Stevenage. Apparently, they turned the best value sponsorship because I think it was Burger King that sponsored them. They made sure their logo was massive on the shirt, so it was replicated perfectly in the game. And they started a Stevenage challenge to get the team played with as much as possible. And they ended up with people getting the Champions League finals and people like Neymar and Messi wearing the Stevenage kit with the Burger King logo on it. And it turns out they are the most played team on the career mode for FIFA 20, which to all of us who play seasons and online, the fact that it's not PSG is, an insight.
Incredible.
But, there you go. Stevenage, the best value sponsorship going.
To follow on with Jesse's line of comedy earlier, I would have thought that West Ham would have been the perfect sponsor for Burger King, but yeah, it's just funny how these things work out sometimes, isn't it? All right, for me this week, I mentioned earlier in the intro about how we'd be taking a bit of a tour of Europe, and for my moment of the week, we're headed to the Netherlands. Dutch club Emmen FC, their sponsorship by the Dutch sex toy brand Easy Toys has stimulated plenty of conversation during the week. Firstly, the Dutch Football Association blocked their jersey sponsorship, saying that football is for young and old, and that the sponsorship wasn't appropriate. However, after a backlash from fans and TV talk shows, the club were permitted to wear the jersey with the Easy Toys logo, presumably because young and older adults also have sex. The club also set up a special entrance to the stadium where fans would be able to enter through where babies traditionally come from. And Emmen FC have finally broken new ground here, while Easy Toys are hoping to penetrate new markets with their sponsorship. Unfortunately, though, Emmen FC manager Dick Lukian did not provide comment throughout the week, though. So, scenes in the Netherlands.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, Tommie. Yeah,
big package there. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, just going back to West Ham, I guess all roads lead back to the Dildo Brothers. Just wondering if your club could do a bit of work with them. Maybe there's something that a bit of a sister club thing could go on there.
That'd be probably a little bit taboo, though, wouldn't it?
That's more of a niche finding there for Twinnings and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow. All right. Look, that could have very easily strayed into own goal territory there, gents. But all right. Scotty, why don't you walk us through what you didn't like this week? What was your own goal?
I think the own goal for me was, Luis Suarez were obviously big animosity kicked out of Barcelona. We'll get on to where he actually ended up a bit later, I think. But there was rumours of him going to Juve and other Italian clubs. So he was trying to pass his Italian citizenship test. And to do that, you have to pass a language test. And in further proof that conspiracy theories are all rubbish and no one can keep a secret, apparently he cheated. He was given all of the answers ahead of it, and apparently he can barely speak a word of Italian. I don't really know what happened. So much so that people have actually he's just given up on moving to Italy because he didn't want it to carry on the story. But I mean, imagine being that rich, powerful. One, can't afford a tutor to actually, teach you proper Italian, but two, getting caught cheating. I think that's no goal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like you say, when you've got all of those resources available to you and you still stuff it up. Jesse, what about you, mate?
Well, that actually that makes me think of it and prompts you own goal on the back of that actually is not just the Suarez saga with the Italy side of things. That's absolutely an own goal, but the way that he's exited Barcelona and the way that Barcelona have dealt with that, because as Messi kind of alluded to in his post, it's a horrendous way for a player who's obviously done a lot for that club to exit. It just everything that's it's just so unclassy. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it, but there's just nothing sort of amicable about these departures at the moment. It's all just kind of leaving on bad terms, and that's just a real shame for both parties, because Suarez obviously will care a lot about that club, and he sort of leaves in an awkward I mean, his last images of him leaving was him crying in the car by himself. I mean, it doesn't get much more depressing than that.
I've got to say, it's not quite the same levels as like Iker Casillas or Gareth Bale leaving Real Madrid, but it's not far off, I reckon.
Yeah, Casillas is a great comparison, actually. The other own goal for me, I mean, we're going to talk about it in the next few games, but just all the handball headlines. Roy Hodgson coming out and speaking about it overnight as well, but it's just a real shame that we're talking about something like that more than the actual games themselves. It shouldn't be like that. So it needs to be addressed. Yeah,
it's probably a good opportunity to throw out all of like this sort of VAR related like own goals straight up, and then we just don't talk about it for the rest of the pod.
Yeah, that's right. We have no own goals.
Yeah. All right. For me, my own goal for the week was mentioned before about doing a tour of Europe. We're going to head to Estonia now, and I had to feel for poor Nom Kalju, I think it is, or Kalju. I'm not sure if they do hard or soft J's in Estonia. But 16-year-old young fellow made a start for a club in Estonia, and after 13 seconds, he was subbed off. At first, I thought, "What the hell? Like that's pretty weird. Like, surely, like how bad can you possibly be in 13 seconds?" But after having watched the footage, I realised that he didn't actually touch the ball. He hasn't done anything wrong, and as it turns out, just one of those quirk of rules that in Estonia you've got to have. I think it's there's a minimum number of homegrown players you need to have, and so they had to play this 16-year-old, and then pretty much they subbed him off as soon as they could at the first opportunity, and that way they've met their homegrown quota. So,
Tommie, when you're saying how bad can you be in 13 seconds, I thought you were starting to go back to that Dutch club you were talking about before. But yeah, I thought as you were starting to explain that, when I was trying to figure out in my mind where that was going, I thought, why would you do that? But I guess it had to be something down to they just need a certain amount of appearances, whatever way they do it. So yeah.
And look, sometimes like we've talked about in the A-League about like setting up like more like young player quotas and stuff like that, so that more players under the age of say 23 are getting more game time. But you can see as evidence here that that's not necessarily a silver bullet, and where there's a will to get around a rule, there's a way. So I feel for the poor 16-year-old who had to kit up, warm up, and probably knew that he was getting subbed off after at least 30 seconds, but made 13 seconds into the game before, sorry, mate, you're hooked. One final thing, though, and this didn't necessarily make my own goal of the week, but I want to shoehorn it in here at this point anyway, which is A-League player Adam Lafondra. He unveiled his new Sydney FC-inspired tattoo this week. And obviously we've spoken at length on the pod about Marcus Babbel's Western Sydney Wanderers inspired tattoo. And so John from Twitter, he wants to know which player would we like to see next with an A-League inspired tattoo. Now, I'm going to open this up, not just A-League inspired, but any football player if we would like to see them get like a football inspired tattoo. Chance, you got anything straight up? Otherwise, I'll jump in.
Wow, when you said any football player, you've really opened the floor now, Tommie. I wish I had more notice actually, because when I was thinking A-League, I thought Diamante for the Woo for me. Even if it's just a wee Woo tattoo on his knuckle, he seems like the kind of guy that would get an Australian tattoo of some sort. He's my pick. But any player. I mean, geez, there's some serious candidates out there.
I did. I've got to say, I came up with a couple of ideas in between this question coming up 20 minutes before the pod going up and now, which was that all imports should be branded with the Southern Cross tattoo upon their arrival. Now, I don't know if that would actually generate more imports coming into the league or actually turn out to be a disincentive, but it's one way. The other idea that I had was that if you play for 3 or more A-League clubs, that you get all of the clubs tattooed on your body. So, for example, you got like Liam Reddy, Asaka Cernak, and Anthony Golek, who've played for at least 6 clubs each. That basically, once you get to 3, you think, okay, I need to stop now. I've got a problem, and this way, pretty much, we can shame players into not playing for 3 or more clubs.
I think that's a fair thing, like those players who who move on to a new club and give it, oh, I love this club since I was a youngster. I think I'm going to stay here for the rest of my career. And then 18 months later, they're angling for a move. Like Marko Arnautovic, wouldn't he be great? Every time you join a club, he's got to have that tattoo somewhere prominent. And you're going to go, oh, okay, is it worth, pushing to a move to the Chinese league right now? Do I want to always have that? I don't know. Where does he play now? But,
I'm pretty sure he's still in China. I think he plays with Aaron Moy, actually.
That's it.
Craig Bellamy is another contender for that.
Yes. Yeah. Bellamy. Bellamy would be game. 100% sure Bellamy would be up for a tattoo of every club he's played for.
Yeah, he would.
And I guess maybe just to finally wrap this up, superfan Sal, he wants to know if we can get me to get a more than a game tattoo. And Sal, I've got to say, considering I'm a clean skin, and I've said before that pretty much like my kids' names or date of birth or something like that is the only tattoo I'm getting. There's no way I'm getting a more than a game tattoo. Oh dear. All right, lads. Let's move on to some of the transfers, though. So we'll whip through some of the best ones, and maybe let's start, Jesse, with Luis Suarez to Atleti for £6 million. I'm not sure if it's euros or pounds, £6 million. But what do you think? Good signing? Strange signing?
Well, everyone's talking now about the trifecta of Simeone, Diego Costa, and having Suarez in there as well. I mean, it's just going to be thug life, Atletico Madrid. No one's going to be able to get off the pitch without a red card. So, no, I think to be honest, considering he'll stay in La Liga, that's going to be spicy, especially when they go up against Barca. But also for the Champions League, I kind of felt like I'm not sure Suarez was necessarily going to be the right fit for Juventus, even though they needed someone of that caliber. I think actually he's going to suit the way Atletico play, and I think he played for them previously, didn't he? So he's sort of gone back. I thought he did.
No, never played for them. No,
I think I'm getting confused with his stint. No, he played for Ajax, didn't he? Yeah.
Ajax and Liverpool, then Barca. Yeah.
He feels like the kind of player that would have played for Atleti, I guess, because he plays in that mold, and he is the perfect person to play with Diego Costa up front. And the thing is, they're actually looking pretty decent because they've got Joao Felix in there as well. So yeah, they're looking like a good squad.
And I mean, even though he's not the same player that he was, say, 3 years ago, he's still going to score at least 15 goals this season in the league, and probably more come sort of Champions League and other competitions as well. So
if he can get rid of the spare tyre that's around his waist, that'd be a good start.
You get over 30 and it's hard to shift.
I know.
Nelson Semedo from Barca to Wolves for, I think, approaching £37 million. Scotty, what do you think of that one?
I think he's a good player. I mean, it's one of the more continued additions of Portuguese players to Wolves. Is there a special bylaw in the Premier League that we're not aware of? You don't have to worry about homegrown players, but if they're all from the same nation, you're okay. Like, you can declare your homegrown nation, and they're going to declare it as Portugal. But yeah, I mean, he's a good player. And Wolves, for last season, they probably benefited from the break more than most because they have a very small squad, or they did have a very small squad. So adding this kind of player it's only going to be a benefit when they've lost Doherty to Spurs. So yeah, I think it's a good move, but time will tell if he's going to be. I mean, that's a lot of money for a fullback, so he has to be pretty special for it to be worth it.
Indeed, and I guess obviously that's pretty much a big chunk of the Diogo Jota fee that has gone towards that transfer. So they don't really have a hell of a lot of change left over after that one. Next up is Morata has returned to Juve, this time on loan. I believe it's with an option to buy, which is in my opinion at least. I think it's a bit of a strange move because, I mean, Morata really hasn't set the world on fire on anywhere he's been. Jesse?
Oh, as you know, I'm Morata's #1 fan, so I'm really glad you chose me. No, I think I sort of chuckled at this move because Higuain was scoring no goals really, and Ronaldo was sort of just playing off him, and they've basically replaced him with someone that's not going to score any goals and just let Ronaldo play off him. So I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong here. Murata's probably going to go on and score 30 to 40 goals in all competitions now. But no, I'm pretty comfortable with saying that he'll probably be a good foil for Ronaldo, but I can't see him really being much of a strike force. I mean, he's had his chances at Chelsea and Atleti, and he just hasn't taken them. So unless a dramatic change in his career happens, I think he's just going to sort of be a hold-up player for you.
Fair enough. I've got a couple of stats or useful or interesting tidbits about Morata in the last couple of years. There's been over $200 million in transfer fees spent on him, and he's never scored more than 15 goals in a season. Not great, but people seem to still keep spending money on him. The other one is that he's been signed now by Zidane, Conte, Simeone, and Pirlo. And if he's signed by Red Star Belgrade manager Dejan Stankovic, he will have been signed by a midfielder who's won the Serie A in 16 of the seasons between 95 and 2015. So a little bit of a niche bit of info there, but yeah, obviously he'll probably end up at Red Star Belgrade possibly in the next year or so when he flops again, inevitably, at Juve.
Listeners trying to figure out that stat, they're just like, that's just next level.
Mate, I actually simplified that from how I first saw it written. All right, the final one is Ed Mendy has gone to Chelsea from France. He replaces Kepa, who had the worst save percentage in the Premier League, 54%. Mendy, his save percentage in Ligue 1 last year was 78.4, which made him third best in the league. Boys, look, I will forgive you if you don't know a hell of a lot about him, but what's your gut reaction? Do you think that this guy solves Chelsea's goalkeeper problems over the last 18 months since Kepa arrived?
I think it improves upon their current situation. I think when Kepa was signed, it was I don't know anyone who said that was a value buy, or like it was going to be a buy that would really make sense in a few years. I think he flatters to deceive at times, and there have been, for a lot of the goals that he's been at fault for, he doesn't move. He doesn't even attempt to make a save. And I think that's a flaw in the fact that if your judgment's off, maybe you could have made that save. So I think mentality-wise, there's an issue with Kepa. But Mendy himself, he was actually linked with West Ham when Huzilios was the director of football. And there was a fee of it's under 5 million being talked about at the time. I mean, now we're looking at it going, well, maybe we should have signed him, but we went with Fabianski and that kind of worked. But it's I don't know. All the stats say Mendy's good. I think he had a positive XG in terms of he saved 6 expected goals or something, if you believe as much in those stats as I'd like to try. So he looks like he can be good. But does it solve everything? After yesterday's match, probably not.
It's going to be interesting.
They needed an up-and-comer, Tommie. I was going to say they just needed an up-and-comer because all the great goalkeepers at the moment are really locked in. Oblak and that sort of thing. They just the clubs aren't letting them go. So you really need to pick a goalkeeper who you think is going to not only come through ripe, but get better and better. And obviously they got that horrendously wrong with Kepa, so they need to make this next transfer count. I personally, we'll talk about this in the coming weeks when Kepa's obviously no doubt pushed out, but that is one of the worst transfers I've seen in recent times. We're talking this week about Jota and Thiago to Liverpool. With the same amount of money you've spent on those two players, that is the amount of transfer fee that Chelsea are probably going to lose on Kepa. They're going to go from about 70 million to around 28 million. So you could buy, even looking at it from a West Ham perspective, think how many players you could buy with the offset of the transfer fee that Chelsea is going to lose. It's extraordinary.
You're right. I can't think of many worse transfers in sort of how they've turned out, and also how much Chelsea are going to lose on that transfer as well when the Kepa inevitably leaves. One final transfer before we move on, though, was Nabu and Atkinson, both thinking that they'd signed for Perth, and then, that didn't really pan out because they couldn't get into Perth. So basically, I get the impression that their contracts were wiped out, and then they were everyone thought, oh, well, I guess Atkinson will go back to City and Naboo, he'll probably go back to Victory. But it seems as though Naboo got lost on his way back to Victory, and they both ended up at City. So, Jesse, what do you make of that?
I can't. Sorry, like this really tickles me. Yeah, just like you just wouldn't see this. Where else in the world would you see these kind of shenanigans? I mean, I know the Perth situation is extraordinary circumstances, but just how awkward. I mean, actually, so Atkins, like Naboo's funny because he just keeps going round and round. He's gonna need to get a tattoo soon. He'll qualify for the tattoo rule. But Atkinson, that is so awkward. Like you just said your farewells to your teammates, you get on the plane, or you're about to get on the plane, you get told that you can't sign for the club anymore, and you've got to go back to the training ground and see everyone again. It's so awkward. That's the bottom line for me. The word I describe the whole experience is incredibly awkward for everybody involved.
And Scotty, I don't want to throw you under the bus here, but did you hear about this one, or did you make anything of it?
Yeah, I mean, my A-League knowledge is pretty damn horrendous, despite being here for 4 years. I do follow A-League memes. I think they provide some interesting content on that. And just trying to read comments and trying to pick up what on earth happened. I'm not particularly sure how you reach a point where it has to be decided so quickly. Like how people weren't aware of this a few weeks ago, or it kind of just steps into. But it's one of those, oh yeah, okay, that's not happened, and off you go. And there's just two players sitting there with contracts that are going, so these don't work anymore? No, that's gone. No. Okay, cool. And
I guess the flip side of that is that we don't even know when the season's going to start, right? Like, I guess Perth have got Asian Champions League coming up, but they may not start for possibly another month or two yet. So, yeah, like you say, it's bizarre that no one sort of saw this coming. But all right, that wraps up transfer chat, though. We'll move on to the Premier League now. So first up, obviously the big match, not necessarily the big match, but probably I picked this up as probably the most entertaining, or the one with the most potential overnight, and that was Brighton hosting Manchester United. Brighton, I think, came into the fixture with better form, even though they'd only won one of their previous games. But it was a pretty entertaining game, with Brighton again showing plenty of potential, but ultimately not coming away with anything. This game had records broken, disallowed goals, penalties, some fantastic football by both sides at times, and ultimately a winner after the full-time whistle, which was, I guess, a little bit... I'm not sure if it was anticlimactic or just like it left a bad taste in anyone else's mouth, but look, it was a bizarre game, wasn't it, Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it was going to be a very anti-Man United penalty performance when they actually had one given against them, and someone put them ahead. But yeah, I just think when the final whistle goes, I think that's very odd to then have a decision made like that impacts the result. I can understand potentially if there's like a dangerous play or something, or an injury that happened just before, you can maybe give yellow or red card, because that doesn't necessarily change the result. But a penalty after the final whistle is, I don't know how I feel about it. Like like when VAR was going to come in, I was a very big fan of the idea of making sure decisions were correct. One, I don't think we've actually solved that. And two, what's the point in the referee at the time? When he blows the final whistle, maybe if he just blew to kind of stop play, maybe if VAR is telling him that they're looking at something, but to blow a final whistle it's a strange thing that maybe needs to be sorted going forward.
Did you guys know that was even possible? Because I certainly didn't. I think it's we sort of keep learning about VAR as we go, and I didn't know it was possible. When he blew the whistle, I thought the Man United players are going after him, but they won't be able to do anything now because the game's over. That was because I just didn't understand the rule. I didn't know that he could actually go and have a look after the full-time whistle. So I mean, it just seems like such a bizarre set of circumstances. Did you guys know that was even possible?
It was a first for me as well. I was under the same impression that like once the full time whistle's blown, sorry, like too bad, so sad. Like the game's finished, the game's done. Like I guess VAR is throwing up all sorts of brand new scenarios though, and I mean like the closest we might have come previously was maybe an assistant referee sort of flagging something like after maybe just after the referee's blown in the final whistle or something like that. But excuse me. Do you guys think that Man United were lucky to get away with the 3 points here, or was it a deserved victory?
I'd say like one thing I would always say about football is whoever sticks the most goals in, deserves in inverted commas to win the match. So that's one thing. But in terms of general play and the way the match was thought out, United didn't deserve to come away with something from that, because despite having a massively better team on paper in terms of just individual position to position, they were blocked off from playing the game they wanted to, and Brighton looked very happy to play football, and they weren't afraid. So yeah, I mean, if I was a Brighton fan, I would be spitting feathers right now.
I agree. I agree with that, and I think some of the standouts for me, Solly March was outstanding in this game.
Connor Payne.
Yeah, well, it's very, very niche. He was just excellent. What I loved about him was that he was popping up all over the pitch. I mean, I know that he was predominantly playing on the left flank against Wan-Bissaka, but he was popping up on all sides of the pitch and rotating to get involved. He just wanted to be on the football, and I thought that was interesting because Lallana in that team kind of is playing that kind of sitting back deep and that pivot role, but Solly March it often was just popping back into the same kind of zone and just taking the ball off him and then demanding to go forward. And there was that period in the second half, particularly the last 15 minutes, where Brighton were just throwing the kitchen sink at United, and Solly March was very much sort of leading all that. So I thought he was very impressive. Trossard had a relationship with that crossbar, and it's complicated. I tell you what, like I couldn't believe how many times he hit the bar. Like especially the one. Actually, was it Solly March that might hit the bar as well? But anyway,
I think you did.
Yeah,
and there was one other. I can't remember who was the final one, but I've got a couple of stats about crossbars. So Trossard hit the post 3 times in a match, and it's the first time that's happened since 2006. Any guesses for who might have hit the crossbar 3 times in a game in 2006?
Oh.
Big name.
Oh, if you're saying big name takes lots of shots back in 2006 would have been Ronaldo.
Bingo, it was indeed Ronaldo against Newcastle.
Nice.
The other one was that you mentioned that Trossard hit the post 3 times, and Brighton in general, in total, hit the post 5 times, which is the most that any team has hit the post since they started gathering stats back in, I think it was 2003, 2004. So, I think that in itself, like we've all had those games when you're playing, that surely you start to feel like, oh, geez, it's just not our day. And I tell you what, when you hit the post 5 times in a game, it's just not your day, I think. Boys, got a couple of follow-up questions, though. Do you think Ed Woodward should change his name to Ed Woodwork after that?
Good shout. Really good shout. I was actually gonna say, just Tommie, again, just jumping back to not so much Brighton, but Man United. One of the things that Scott was mentioning before, I sort of summed up that goal that Rashford scored, which was really well taken. But that goal has been the goal that has bailed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer out for the whole time he's been at Man United. It is the one team is looking fantastic, dominating, turnover, whack it long to Rashford. Rashford holds the ball up, cuts inside, and scores. And that's like, and then you go away, and United maybe win the game or get a point out of it, and everyone goes, oh, United were brave and all this kind of crap. And it's like that goal was purely down to Rashford being an elite player rather than Man United being good. Like that was just like, that has bailed him out on a number of occasions. And I was talking to a Man United fan last night about this, and I was just saying they looked bereft of ideas. So I wanted to see what you guys thought about that as well, because I thought they looked bereft of ideas, particularly in the last half of the game.
Yeah, I'd agree there. I mean, the big thing for me about Man United's counter-attacking goals is they're not set up to play on the counter. And that's like it. I understand that counter-attacking play is a way to really get the game going your way. But if you compare this side to a Man United side that had Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez, that side just every time they were on the defensive and they got the ball, you were worried because suddenly they had the pace to break against you, and you weren't capable of dealing with that many players at pace. But now it seems, you're right, it seems more like, okay, we're going to hit one long ball to Rashford and see what he does, or to Martial and see what he does, rather than have a system that gets people forward quickly. It's get one player with the ball forward quickly. Let's hope he bends it into the top corner, or in this case, beats 3 people, puts them down on their houses, and finds a corner. Is that really a great system?
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting because normally Bruno Fernandes wouldn't be picking up the ball as deep as what he did in this situation, and I guess it's fortunate that he was able to play such a good ball for Rashford, and obviously Rashford still had heaps to do once he did get the ball, but I guess that combination is pretty much what that is Man United's system. It's get the ball to Fernandes, and then hopefully he can provide enough of an opportunity for either Martial, Greenwood, or Rashford, which, I mean, consider how much money they've spent. It's not really a particularly sophisticated strategy. Look, I do want to put some respect, I guess, on that Rashford goal. Like, everyone has, I think, talked up Liverpool and their performances over the last couple of years, but like that Rashford goal, that felt like that could have been Salah or Mane doing that as well. And I think that's probably one of the best compliments I think you can put on that Rashford goal. I think we talked a little bit about Man United though, gents. What did you make of Brighton's performance though?
I think they look really solid. They say this system. It's so they kind of play with 3 centre backs, and then they have the wing backs, or defensive wide players, and it seemed to really. I mean, we talk about West Ham played like that against Arsenal last week as well. It seems to unsettle some players that rely heavily on wide players to influence the game. But Brighton have looked really organised this campaign. They've showed signs of it last campaign as well, and they've picked up some good players, players that play very well in that position. Maybe not the best footballers if you had to sort of compare them against some of the big names in the world, but they play very well in the position and in the system that they have been picked for. And I think a lot of credit has got to go to Graham Potter for that. I don't think we give enough credit to maybe managerial names that we haven't heard of before, or don't have big CVs. I think Graham Potter's shown that he's more than capable of doing well in the Premier League.
Great point. Anybody who questions how much of an influence managers have over football clubs, just look at Brighton, because I would never have stayed up to watch Brighton Man United in the last couple of years. As much as I admired the job that they were doing, just hanging on in the Premier League, I didn't want to watch them play. And I was looking forward to that game last night. And obviously you were too, Tommie, because you highlighted it as one of the games of the round for you. But I would never have had that opinion of Brighton before this change in management style. And the players look like they're enjoying it more than they were previously as well. So, yeah, they're not getting the results, which everybody will be quick to criticise. But you can't play like that every week and not win.
I think they're going to get better results as the season goes on. But I guess I think Graham Potter would have maybe one concern, though. Carl Anker on Twitter, he's a pundit for The Athletic, he said that Brighton are Poch-era Southampton. And I really like that comparison. But I guess if there's one sort of similarity between these two teams and maybe even Tottenham to a lesser degree, maybe in like the Champions League against better teams, is that Brighton possibly could be said have a bit of a soft underbelly. I mean, they had a midfield too of Alzate and Lallana, and I mean, you kind of know what you're going to expect, what you're going to get from those two players, and I guess that's a bit of a fear, I think, for Brighton moving forward against probably top half of the table teams, I think. Would you agree with that, gents?
I think they need a strong, busy Australian midfielder that's lost all his hair. Oh wait.
If only they had one.
So I'd get that in there while Colby's not on the pod. That one's for you, mate.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. I would say I very much agree with that, because if United were better at moving the ball across their pivot, I think Pogba and Matic are probably a bit too slow on the ball most of the time. Then we may have seen that midfield pairing really isolated or picked out. But Carl comes up with some great points. We'll just sort of name drop. We went to school together, and he's a great guy as well. So
no way.
Yeah. I mean, he was far too cool for me in terms of actually being too good a mate to be. He's a nice guy, and he comes up with some great points on the athletic stuff. So yeah, I think that's a great comparison.
Fair enough. I actually didn't know that. So cool. All right. Let's keep moving though. Next up, Crystal Palace hosted Everton, and both teams were in pretty good form heading into this one. And Jesse, you would think that this was going to be pretty close, but Everton's class ended up shining through in the end.
Yeah, I mean, we're all waiting to see what kit Everton's going to wear each week, because they're leading the kit chat this year, and a nice away number. I was pretty pleased with that. So that was a good start for them before the ball had even been kicked. But Hummus, again, I'm just looking through rose-tinted glasses with Hummus, and I just want him to be good every time I watch him. And he's not doing anything to suggest that he's going to be anything other than a great addition to that squad, because if anything, the fact that he's in a team which seems almost, if you said a few years ago, it seems like a very un-Hummus-like team, it actually seems like a good thing for him, because there's no other players that play like him in that team, so he can just basically do as he pleases. He's got a couple of very good defensive midfielders behind him, and he's just able to just pick up the ball. And I noticed last night, similar to what I was saying about March before, he was popping up on the left-hand side of the pitch a lot more than he was the week before, so he was actually leaving the right flank and playing on the other side with Luka Dean. So you've got two players on one side that can whip the ball in for Calvert-Lewin. So I don't think Hummus and Everton necessarily played to their potential yesterday. I think that they got pegged back by a really dogged Palace side. But away from home, Selhurst Park's a pain in the ass to get a result from. So credit to them for getting the win. Yeah, a good win for Everton.
And more goals again for Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. He's in incredible form. I think that takes him to 5 goals already this season. He leads the goal scoring chart. So another fantastic goal for him, and good times, I guess, for Everton. There were a couple of penalty shouts in this one, both for Everton. The first one was not given. And then the second one was given. The first one, in my opinion, was actually a stronger case for a penalty, though. Did either of you two make much of those two penalty decisions, or?
I will say I only caught the one that was actually given. I don't think it's a surprise if you're saying that there were penalty decisions don't seem to be too consistent at the moment. So if you think one makes more sense to be given, that's probably the one that's not going to be given at the moment.
I just find it utterly bizarre, Tommie. I mean, I've said to you before, I mean, I grew up in a very non-football following country, playing rugby, watching rugby. And then as I grew older, I got really, really into football. And one of the things that's always been a bit peculiar to me going across from rugby to football is the handball rule. And not just the fact that it has always been pretty complicated, but the fact that it's just got more complicated, and then how it is the ultimate punishment for a team. Like, if you get pinged for handball in the box, you get most likely a goal scored against you. It is not just a small infringement. It's like, imagine if these handballs were the indirect free kicks. Like, what happens then? Is that a better outcome than a penalty? Because penalties are just so brutal, and ultimately, if you want to take an example of that, you just have to look at Palace last night. They the whole game was turned for Everton. They didn't have to work hard and score any more goals. They could sit back and actually just defend, because they got a goal off a dubious penalty. And that's a real shame, because all the pundits were talking about after the game, all the players thought it wasn't a penalty. The old Dermot Gallagher, who was there, who looks like he's just been rolled out of a coffin. He has to sort of toe the line and say, this is what the rules are, this is what the refs are working to. So you can't actually just criticize the refs, because they seem to be working to what the rules are. but there's just a clear divide between players, fans, managers, and the rule book. Clear gap between what should be right in people's opinions. Like, what do you guys think?
I like the idea of there being a difference between either an intentional or a goal-stopping handball, and one of those that just hits people's arms, or if it's like, I feel really bad for those who are going into challenges, and you're less than a meter away from them, and suddenly they've maybe not hit the shot exactly where they want. It flies up, hits you on the arm, and as you suggested, that's probably a goal conceded because of where it's hit you, not through any fault of your own. It's not like a Suarez World Cup goal-stopping handball. That is a red card and a penalty. But for so many that we've seen, people are arguing about on social media afterwards about consistency. Maybe that would help. Maybe that actually gives the referee that ability to go, okay, I don't think it was a bad handball as such, or a really impactful one, but it's changed the direction of the ball. That indirect free kick. Go from there.
Tommie, just this is the interesting thing about the handball rule, though. Just stepping back from what happened last week and the week before, and who got the decision, who didn't get the decision. Just looking at as a fan of football, does it feel right to have a game like that game last night decided upon a moment where a player didn't have their arm like that? They had their arm relatively close to their body, defending, doing everything they can to try and get out of the way. It hits their arm. To the letter of the law, they're getting punished. But it just as a fan, because this is how laws should be created. They should be based on common sense. And this doesn't seem to make sense to me. I say this because I came across from another code, and I don't understand why there's such a brutal punishment for something that clearly in many cases is accidental. So I don't know how you guys feel.
Look, I think that's a great shout about making unintentional handball, making that an indirect free kick. I think we can't just have, I guess, it is football, right? And I think the idea of being penalised for when the ball does strike someone's hand, that is one of the sort of foundation rules of the game. But I think there needs to be a balance there as well, right? And basically being in 9 out of 10 instances a goal if it accidentally ricochets into someone's arm. I think that doesn't strike the right balance, and I don't think that's what fans or players or anyone associated with the game really wants. So look, that could be one way to solve it, and I think it seems pretty reasonable to me. But I guess if there's one thing we've seen about the world of football, it's not necessarily reasonable things that happen. Speaking of other things that probably should have happened but didn't, Cecchiati, he scored from a corner after a pretty nice solid header, I thought. But it was definitely at a savable height for Jordan Pickford, who's come under under a bit of criticism lately. Do you think he should have done better for this opportunity, or
there wasn't even a courtesy dive, was there? It's just.
He's literally had a flap at it, and I think even a flap is pretty complimentary, I think, to Jordan in this instance. But look, I think it's gone at him quickly, but I think he's got to be doing better though.
He looks like a goalkeeper who just needs to be dropped, and he needs someone else to go in there and take his position and be given a shot. And feel what it's like to be sitting on the sideline for a while, because there's just some really half-assed stuff that Pickford's doing, which we've just been criticising Kepa for that, and they've gone out and bought another goalkeeper. So how Pickford keeps getting the opportunity, I mean, Ancelotti's going to get impatient with him soon. I don't like Pickford because I think that if I'm a football fan, if I'm an Everton fan, I'm getting disappointed with his lack of. He's not even in some cases fully outstretched. That goal last night was so central that at first I thought it was probably harsh to criticise him, and then you watch the replay and it's about half a metre away from his body. He hasn't even got a limb towards the ball. That's not good enough for a Premier League goalkeeper. He's got to do better than that.
I think goalkeepers get picked on at times because any mistake they make does tend to end in a goal, but I don't mind.
But there are saves that you would expect someone to make, and saves that they're not expected to make, right?
Yes, 100%. in the world where you're asking them to make more and more like use of their feet, and I understand that goalkeepers can come under a lot of criticism, but Pickford's criticisms aren't usually that. They are because he doesn't make saves that you think he should. There's just, it seems to be a lot about him. You watch some of them and you go, okay, his technique seems on, it's all okay. But then other saves, even ones he's making, there's an underlying issue that he doesn't seem to get in the right position to make a save that will consistently divert the ball away from traffic or get enough behind it. And I think you're right. In 2 points, Ancelotti is likely to get frustrated with him. But a point you made earlier, if they're looking to bring in someone really that's going to challenge him consistently, they're going to have to spend a lot because a lot of the big keepers are set. I mean, the only real challenge that comes to mind is if Man United can keep 2 goalkeepers of the talent that they have at the club.
Just one final point on him, Tommie. I just wanted to say is that his distribution was the other thing. So we've just talked about his shot saving because that's what everyone's focusing on. But I watched him for the whole game last night just to see what his distribution was like, and it was appalling. Once they got hemmed in, maybe it's because he has no faith in Mina, which, you know, join the club. I've got no faith in Mina either. But he basically he got to a point that once he was, Jordan Ayew had got within about 10 meters, he's like, I'm just going to whack it long. And that's okay if you've got a Edison or Allison-like distribution ability to actually find someone on the chest. But he was just spraying them for most of the second half. Hopeful long kicks, and we know what they look like because Foster mastered it for Watford. It was just a long ball, hoping that it will hit someone, and Everton lost momentum, lost the ability to hold the ball in the second half, and that's not all because of Pickford, but it certainly doesn't help when your goalkeeper is giving the ball away and giving them attacking opportunities every second goal kick. So it's not just his shot saving that I'd criticise Pickford for. I think his all-round game is pretty poor at the moment.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Alrighty, boys, we're going to move on to the final, not the final game, onto the next game, though, which was West Brom hosting Chelsea. Chelsea, one of the biggest spenders of the most recent transfer window, which remains open. They travelled to last year's championship runners-up. And I thought this game had all of the ingredients to be an absolute bloodbath, with Chelsea having spent a metric shit ton on attacking players, the likes of Werner and Havertz joining the existing attacking talent they have. And West Brom had 2 poor defensive performances on the trot, conceding 8 goals in their first 2 matches. But it didn't pan out like that. In fact, West Brom, they were the ones that scored first, and I think it was about the 3rd minute. And it all was downhill from there, basically, until sort of half-time, and Frank could get the lads into the sheds and get the head straight. A couple of things that stood out, though. First of all, Thiago Silva, he made his debut for Chelsea, and he was named as captain. Not the greatest. I think it was just a pretty strange one all around for Thiago Silva. First up, being named in your first match for a new club and being chosen as captain, strange. And then obviously he was at fault for, I think it was the second West Brom goal. So look, probably not one to remember for him. Boys, what did you think of Thiago Silva's performance though?
I think it is further evidence that Frank Lampard is playing Football Manager, and what he does is the people that he want to pick as captain aren't playing, so he then looks at leadership and teamwork abilities, and he's gone up. Thiago Silva's older, he has the leadership, so he's in. You realise he hasn't played a game for us. It doesn't matter. He's got good leadership. That's fine. In you go. And it's just an odd one in terms of debuts are hard. Joining a new team, especially when you are a good player. That idea where he's a good player, people are going to be watching him. People are always going to be focusing on him. So there's going to be pressure. And then you've just gone, okay, here is this armband, which means very little to you because you haven't got an idea of most of the squad at this point or how we're going to be playing on the pitch. But we're just going to magnify all pressure, and anything you do is just going to be amplified. So here you go, have that. It's a big call from Frank Lampard to do that. And probably one that didn't work so well.
A lovely homage from the West Brom players, a barcode each for each Chelsea sign in the off-season, just to match their contracts. So a lovely homage from West Brom. A lot of respect for Chelsea, obviously shown. If only Chelsea could show that kind of respect to their own players by not picking a person in their first game as captain. That I agree, that's an absolute... I don't understand what Lampard was trying to do there. I actually had to sort of rub my eyes when I saw Thiago Silva was named captain.
Oh dear! In that goal that he was largely at fault for, it appeared as though Thiago Silva was sort of caught napping. Was caught a little bit surprised by the press there. Do you think that's a result of him coming out of France? Maybe he's not used to being pressed, or what do you think the deal is there?
Probably. I mean, the fact that if he's surprised by West Brom's press, there's going to be a very bad outcome for him in this league. And I'm surprised that he hasn't come up against more pressing sides in the Champions League and been kind of used to it. But I suppose in Europe, there's slightly less intensity for a 90-minute match in terms of week in, week out. But yeah, I don't know. I hope it isn't, because otherwise, it's a massive. It'd be quite nice if it is, because that means the Premier League's even better than we think it is. The French League is just as bad as all of the internet memes say. But yeah, I think it's just first game jitters, and that's the issue. When you're very content to play it along your back line, you're going to have that from time to time.
Fair enough. I know the French league has a real reputation for being a farmers' league, so maybe Thiago Silva was just more used to opposition attackers just pressing grapes in the field rather than pressing his defence. So
that's right.
Yeah, alas, not the way things panned out. But look, it wasn't really a particularly impressive performance by Chelsea, especially in that first half, though. Frank managed to get the boys into the changing rooms at halftime and gave him a bit of a rev up. He gave Alonso came off at halftime for Azpilicueta, and I think it was Kovacic came off as well. He was replaced by Hudson-Odoi, and things were very different though for Chelsea in the second half. Mason Mount, he scored for Chelsea, and what was I guess a bit of a strange one, really. Like it looked like he'd really hit it pretty hard, but everyone sort of was looking at I think it's Sam Johnston, the West Brom goalkeeper, like he should have done a lot better. Would you agree with that?
The Mason Mount goal you're referring to? Yeah. That was bizarre. Yeah, if I'm going to criticize Pickford for the same thing, I've got to criticize him, because he needs to at least do an apology dive there. The fans deserve that at the very least. Yeah, nothing worse than watching a goalkeeper just stand still. But it was a good hit from Mason Mount.
Yeah, I think Frank Lampard seems to be giving him a license to do what he used to, and just occasionally just let loose from positions you maybe not, maybe other players don't. I think he had 7 shots, Mason Mount, more than any other Chelsea player, 5 from outside the box. So he's certainly not scared of giving it a go.
It was a little bit strange, I thought, like Frank's setup. In fact, like I think he had Mason Mount. It was sort of occupying like that centre left like channel, but then it looked like he had Werner sort of more through the centre in like almost like the number 10 role, and then Havertz I think was out on the right, and it was just like it seemed all over the place. Like he was trying to shoehorn all of these players in, and it didn't seem like any of them bar Abraham, who was actually in their sort of favoured position. I think Frank Lampard's really got to sort out like some of these players. They would obviously have preferred positions, but also they've got positions in which they've been successful in and shown a lot of promise in before. And I think playing Havertz as a 10 or Mount as a 10, playing Werner off of the left or up top as a 9, like I feel like these are not sort of groundbreaking decisions or ideas, and yet Lampard seems to be doing really sort of like wild things at the moment.
I think I think you're exactly right, and I think what sort of sums it all up is that you had Reece James was very prominent in this game. I thought he played really well, but he was bombing down the right and fizzing the ball in, and it just sort of showed how Chelsea was conflicted between two styles. I mean, are they going to go for for a tall bloke like Abraham up front and try and get him on the end of these crosses, or are they going to try and move it through the middle through with Havertz and Werner? So I think to go on what you just said there, Tommie, it's like, are they trying to play a Werner game or an Abraham game? Because I don't know if you can play both if they're both on the pitch at the same time. I think you need to have a plan A and a plan B and alternate between the two of them. That kind of obsession to get it to Reece James didn't fit in with the Havertz Mount experiment for me. I didn't know what he was trying to do there.
100%. And I mean, like people have been critical of Frank Lampard that he's not particularly successful at setting up a defence, and he's brought in Thiago Silva for that to bring some experience there. But like at the other end of the pitch, like they're a little bit sort of chaotic, and they don't have their best players playing in their best positions at the moment. And I don't know, like they seem like a bit of a mess. And like frankly, I think they've probably got about 3 or 4 too many players in their squad as well. I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 players leave. The likes of Hudson-Odoi, like, I mean, he's surely got to be looking at that and saying, like, why, like, what am I doing here if he's only going to be making an appearance in every third match? Like, go and get a loan and play some minutes and continue development. But, look, that Chelsea squad at the moment is a bit of a mess, I think, for me. And Frank's decisions, I think, are making things worse. Curiously, in this match though, like Chelsea really did put West Brom under a lot of pressure. They had 75% of the possession throughout the match, which it's just like a lot of possession, and obviously they were able to convert in the second half. But yeah, by no means was it a particularly satisfying performance, I think, for Chelsea, and I think a lot of Chelsea fans would agree. Boys, do you have any other sort of key points or things you wanted to bring up from that match?
I mean, obviously the game was made harder for Chelsea by the fact that they conceded after 4 minutes, and it just meant, West Brom could just sit there and soak up pressure in the way that they wanted to, which probably forced them to go wide more than they wanted to. But I mean, for Lampard and the Chelsea sort of upper echelons, why are you spending so much money on players if you're not going to play them in the preferred position? I understand if you buy a James Milner and shift him around the pitch wherever you want, because he's probably one of the most versatile players in the world. But there's no point spending whatever they did on Havertz and Werner when you're not going to play them where they want. I think Werner gets a goal every other game when he plays up front. But it's much worse when he plays wide on the left. So if you're buying goals, stick them up front. And I don't say, like, I've seen 3 or 4 different opinions on what positions they were playing, because they weren't particularly defined. It was they tried to almost play with 3 10s that kind of floated in these positions, and they haven't had enough time to gel to do that. You could probably do that when that Messi false 9 under Guardiola was a big thing, because everyone knew what everyone was going to do. All the runs were perfect. Everyone was in sync. But you need to have that chemistry to be able to play that close in without just standing in each other's way and taking each other's space. And Chelsea don't look like that at that point yet.
I think when they do get all their players back, that'll obviously make things easier. Ziyech on the right, in my opinion. You've Werner up front, Pulisic on the left, and then maybe Havertz sitting in behind the 3 of them. That makes a lot more sense to me than anything we've seen so far. So we're probably going to see Abraham and Mount on the bench. If not, one of them may even go on loan at the last minute. I can't rule that out. I think that those 2 players, Abraham and Mount, don't fit the setup. I think that one of those guys will have to fall out of the first 11. See less of them. Yeah,
fair enough. All right, let's keep moving though. Burnley hosted Southampton in the final match that was played overnight. Southampton took all 3 points away from the visit to the English Northwest. Danny Ings with the only goal, and it was scored pretty early on as well. Scotty, what did you think of this one?
Well, I think it's another wonderful example of how an early goal completely changes the way the game sets up. Southampton scored a goal, which, I mean, just straight out of, chalkboard drawings. It's perfect. It releases Che Adams into sort of the wide area of the penalty box, and he blindly cuts it back, knowing that Danny Ings is going to be there. And it's a manager style dream, because you know that if you can get players into those areas and repeat that move, you're going to get goals. And especially Danny Ings is, I think he's very underrated as a marksman. And from then, Southampton are another very well drilled side, and it showed. Burnley found it very hard to break them down. I think they've ended up having a fair few shots from long range, which isn't the Burnley style, and that really, for me, encapsulates the way Southampton played the game.
Yeah, I think Hasenhüttl's earned a lot of fans over the last probably 12 months. Maybe that big loss to Leicester aside, but yeah, especially after lockdown and into 2020, they had really performed particularly well, and it's good to see, I guess, that they've carried that form into the new season. But Burnley though, like things are looking pretty grim there at the moment, aren't they?
Perfect time for Southampton to play Burnley. They were injury ravaged. They've still got players that aren't quite ready yet. Barnes is not quite ready yet. That was the perfect time to play them. And I think it's Tarkowski. He's been linked with you guys for a long time. He's still got a sore toe. Read into that how much he will. But these players, they look like a very unsettled squad. They're not a huge squad. So if you have a couple unsettled players in there or injuries, it does screw them a little bit. So considering that Southampton played periods of good football in the last two games, but still lost pretty heavily, especially against Spurs, that was the perfect time for them to play Burnley. And critically, they got a win and a clean sheet, which will be a much needed clean sheet for them.
I know it's really early days, and it looks as though Burnley may lose Tarkowski either to West Ham or to Leicester. He's the other team that looking like they're sniffing around at the moment. Do you think, I think it was almost universal that Burnley would be sort of mid-table, possibly even as high as sort of 7th or 8th or something like that. Do you think everyone has massively overestimated Burnley this season, or too early to say?
Probably too early to say. They've got a very effective system. If they can utilise Chris Wood and his aerial ability, then you're going to see them go on runs of games where they nab a goal in the first half, and then they're solid enough to carry that through. Again, Sean Dyche's got them playing in a way that he knows, and most of the squad are familiar with it now. So I would still back them to finish mid-table at this point, but as you said, it's early days. Is it a sign of something going wrong? We've seen long-term managers undone at some point. Is this the season people start to work it out?
But Burnley do this every year. They go to the bottom of the table, the first half of the season, everyone's like, Burnley gone. And then they just somehow revive themselves in the second half of the season. They drive the car to the edge of the cliff and they put the handbrake on and slide away into the sunset. I don't know how they do it, but they seem to do it every year. So this, to be honest, is just a normal Burnley start.
Fair enough. Alrighty, I'm going to call it quits there, gents, for the Premier League chat. So, but we've still got 6 games left of this round. We're not even halfway through it yet. So we're going to go through some predictions. And first up, although it's not on tonight, West Ham play Wolves, and Scotty, because we've got you on the pod, I'm going to indulge in a little bit of West Ham chat. So Jesse, look, just stick with me, mate. And we're going to roll through, I think, and unpack some of the issues, I guess, with West Ham at the moment. I guess a lot of our listeners would probably already be aware, either through the pod or just in general, about some of the issues at the club to do with like the stadium and I guess like some of the issues with the squad as well. But the issues go, I guess, a little bit deeper than just, I guess, some of those sort of surface level issues. And so I guess, Scotty, I think this is a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit of West Ham and maybe inform some of the listeners about like what are some of the issues outside of just the fact that we've got an underperforming squad and a stadium that none of the fans seem to like.
Yeah, I mean, the stadium is probably a great place to start because when the Davids took over, there was, an air that they, their formal name, the Dildo Brothers. Yeah, so it's a case of where there was an idea that they'd say like kind of come in at a good time, so it helped us with financials and the like, because again we'd had owners go bust, we'd had sponsors go bust whilst they were sponsoring us. So we had, I think that was Alpart. You had a currency thing. You had the XL Airlines who went bust as well. Like basically, West Ham seemed to be a magnet for poor financial investment, and the idea of a new stadium, obviously for those older fans, was a real heart wrencher because Upton Park had been home forever. It's a great old stadium. It's classic. Things still falling apart, smelled very odd in places, and you didn't really want to ask what was going on around the corners. But everyone knew everyone. There was a sense of history with it, and I think I was cautiously optimistic about the stadium move because I kind of thought, the move, the way things are moving was people need to be in bigger stadiums to get that revenue, to get that kind of finance to move up the game. And then since we've moved, we just haven't really seen anything that indicates we're breaking a mold of the Premier League. So we've kind of stayed roughly similar in position for net spend and the like. We've signed a carousel of strikers that have failed to score pretty much any goals except for Arnautovic. Alaire's done okay, but again, massive spending on players that haven't come in and delivered. And I think since that Bilic season, we've been in this perpetual state of wondering what's coming next. And the signs are at the moment that there's nothing new, nothing exciting over the horizon. Sorry. And for that, I think this is why you're starting to see this real fan resentment at the moment.
Back to what you were saying about that Bilic season. I remember one of the things that Sullivan said. Sullivan being one of the Davids, who's he's pretty much sort of the head of the board. I guess he's one of the co-chairmen. He was saying at the end of that, I think it was the 16-17 season, that they couldn't keep going on with like their existing scouting or their system for signing players, and they were going to roll out a world-class scouting and data analysis setup. And Scotty, how many steps would you say have been made towards a world-class data analysis and scouting setup?
Well, I'll open this question out because how many scouts do you think West Ham have? Full-time scouts are on West Ham's payroll.
I've got a fair idea. I'll let Jesse answer. Come on, mate.
Jesse, what do you think is a reasonable number?
No, I didn't even know what a normal number is. So you guys give me some kind of indication.
Well, like Everton are rumoured, there's like at different levels. They have hundreds at, throughout the UK at different levels, so different paying amounts and this kind of thing. West Ham have one. West Ham have one full-time scout. We have a subscription to a scouting software thing, that looks at stats and highlights these things that are out of kilter and potentially identifying good players. But then if we have subscription to that, so does everybody else. We went for a director of football with Pellegrini. I still think a director of football is a good idea, but when Pellegrini picks his mate and they both sign their sons as scouts, I'm not particularly sure it was the best. Is it picked on merit? Probably not. And then you fire them 18 months after they got their job. So there's a lot of things out of sync. I think if you look at any football team that's succeeding at the moment, like Liverpool, Chelsea to an extent with their transfers, Red Bull, Dortmund, all of them have a director of football. And it's not a director of football who's tied into the performance of the club. He's tied in just to the way the team are, like the players that are coming in and the kind of like ethos or philosophy of the club. So Dortmund have this very, their director of football insists that all teams play the same way throughout the club. So your youth team is playing the same way as your senior team. And now obviously that's going to change a little bit with managers, but the director of football has a say in the manager. So you're picking like manager that's going to kind of continue that philosophy. Because what's the point? I wrote an article recently about it, and so the idea of it is you have this building towards an idea, and if you're buying players that are going to play in a fast-moving system they're maybe not strong, big, and aerial. There's no point in getting Tony Pulis in as your manager. He's going to try and knock long balls to your 5'7" striker. So there's not this idea of a continuous building, and we're left with a squad that's very thin, it's quite old. I think it's the third oldest squad in the Premier League of this year. We only have 3 centre backs. It's like we've got Aller, Anderson, Yarmolenko on the bench, who are all on big wages. It's a very strange system throughout, and I think that just comes from poor leadership from the board and being too involved, because they're not football people. I mean, as anyone who knows anything, they're not. They've got their money from running sex shops and the like. So it's why are they making transfer decisions?
And that's probably a good segue into, I guess, the next question, which is, well, if there's a rudimentary scouting setup and they're using the same data analysis that probably 90% of the other clubs in the world have either got or have at their disposal, in either directly or indirectly. Yeah, exactly. And there's no director of football. Then who's making decisions then?
Well, yeah, it's mostly David Sullivan and his assorted mates. There was a rumour that we were deciding between Eze and Ben Rama in the summer. And we favoured Ben Rama because his agent had been partying with Sullivan's kids at their Ibiza townhouse or whatever. And it's like, well, why is that the understanding of our decisions? Why is that where things are coming from? There's a name that seems to be linked with far too many West Ham transfers, and that's Salthouse. And he's an agent, so you can kind of understand when that happens. But he apparently got money when Diangana was sold, even though he's not Diangana's agent. So there's a lot of worrying involvement from players, from agents and third parties that aren't tied to our performance, and that's not good for anyone.
One thing you mentioned there is perpetual, and I think that's a great word for it, because it's like if you keep doing the same things, you keep making the same mistakes. And mistakes is another thing. I look at it from a neutral perspective from the outside, and I look at some of the decisions they're making. And even if they did go for either of those two players, are they the right players for their West Ham squad right now? Or are they just basically brought in to fix the last mistake? So you're basically constantly trying to patch an old wound rather than actually replenish the team. Are they? And that goes back to what you said before about the ethos of the club. Is the West Ham way? Have they got a West Ham way?
Well,
let's throw some more cliches in there, guys. But it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like what you said before about Dortmund, Liverpool have that now. I don't necessarily think they had that before, but they do now. So the Carabao Cup squad plays the same as the main team as well. The women's teams and the under 23s and stuff all play the same way. So very similar to Dortmund in that regard. So I look at that and I think, well, that would be really important, because if you work backwards from that, that's going to start deciding who you bring in. But what you're just describing there, you just bring in those guys in because Haller didn't work and the person before him didn't work,
You're not trying to. You're fixing the problems of last season as opposed to saying, okay, what do we want to be doing this season? Which, it's incredibly frustrating to be watching. I guess not necessarily just week in, week out, but sort of from month to month, year to year kind of thing. Boys, sorry, mate.
I was going to say, if you're talking about that thing, like Diangana was meant to be, one of the big things coming out of our academy. Real highlight of the West Ham way, produce our own players. They're young, exciting, hungry to play, but we've ended up in a squad that's so unbalanced that we need to sell him because our other big signings are now so unmarketable that no one wants them. We need funds for elsewhere, and if you have someone overlooking, so a few years ago when Diangana was kind of on the edge of the side making sub appearances. If you have a director of football that's aware of that, okay, we don't need Felipe Anderson was 25, 26 at the time. It's a massive signing for someone who plays in the same position as someone we potentially have coming in. but then you can't have both of them in the same side. So now you signed the big money player, and we can't make a profit on him. We have to sell the player that we produced ourselves, and we haven't spent money on a fullback in like 6 years since Masuaku. And I mean, yeah, Cresswell and Masuaku as our left back options. For 2 years you can kind of go, okay, 1 year, okay, you can see Cresswell never got back to his full fitness. 2 years, okay, now we need to start coming in for someone. 5 years it is now. 5 years we started a season with those two as our first and second choice left back, and that is a real sign of recruitment done badly.
Yeah,
100%. Alrighty, I think Jesse and the listeners have probably indulged us enough for now talking about West Ham. So, look, Scotty, to wrap things up, what's your score prediction for Wolves versus West Ham, and why?
I think Wolves are going to win this 2-1. I don't think that West Ham have the firepower combined with stability to really trouble what is a very well set up Wolves side. And even if Wolves go behind, I think they've got options to change things up, whereas David Moyes will wait until the 86th minute to make a change. And
well, I don't even think it'll be David Moyes because he's got coronavirus.
Via Zoom.
Oh dear, Jesse. Next up is Sheffield United are going to be hosting Leeds. They're going to be resuming hostilities after having played each other recently in the Championship 2 years ago. What's your prediction here?
The Yorkshire Derby, the Pie Derby, as we were talking about the other week. I reckon Sheffield United are going to get this one. They need a win desperately. Leeds look dangerous, as we all know, but I think Leeds' defensive frailties, being away from home, is gonna be the difference. And I think Sheffield United will win 2-1. I've also got Fleck in my fantasy team, so hopefully Fleck finally gets some attacking returns. That'd be nice as well.
If he doesn't get a return, are you going to give him the Fleck, or?
Well, it remains to be seen. Tommie.
Scotty, Tottenham are going to be hosting Newcastle. What's your prediction there?
I think Spurs will take this one. I think they'll go for it'll be 1 or 2-0. Yeah, Mourinho masterclass. Keep it boring.
It's going to have both teams playing 5 at the back. Oh, geez, one to avoid, I reckon. Jesse, Manchester City are going to be hosting Leicester City in the City Derby. What's your prediction here?
Geez, this has been a hard one because players have been dropping like flies on both sides. Ndidi's out, so that obviously makes it look like Leicester's going to be super weak. But now City have lost Jesus during the week, so it looks like Sterling's probably going to be playing up front by himself. So I think Manchester City will still win, but I don't think it'll be the blowout that some of us maybe thought it might be. I think it'll be more like a 2-0 win to Manchester City.
Interesting. A couple of other teams that have just come up from the Championship in the last 2 years are going to be renewing hostility. Scotty, Fulham playing Aston Villa. What's your prediction there?
I'm going to go with 1-0 Villa. I think Fulham have been pretty awful so far. Villa have got a few signings. I think they'll just look to try and keep a clean sheet and nick it. I don't think there's going to be too many fireworks in that.
After Villa's defensive record over the last 12 months, I think, they'd be happy with 1-0 against Fulham. And finally, the last match of the round is going to be Liverpool hosting Arsenal. Jesse, what's your prediction here?
Well, I mean, I'm obviously going to back a Liverpool team at Anfield. I think 2-0 to Liverpool. We might see a similar plot as the Manchester United game earlier in the year, where we were sort of 1-0 for most of the game and only got that second goal late. Arsenal were much more stubborn under Arteta, and I think they've won the last 2 games against us, so plenty of respect there. But I think Klopp will have a point to prove after losing to them a couple of times, and I think at Anfield, I expect us to get the win. Fair
enough. All right, that wraps things up for Premier League talk. But I do want to I'm pretty happy to be able to make a Fantasy Premier League announcement as well. I did promise in the last couple of weeks that I would talk about what the prizes are going to be. The league has got 117 teams in total, but there's only 37 who will be eligible to win a prize. Look, the big question that everyone's got, though, is, what are the prizes? So With 37 paid up teams, that means we've got a prize pool of $370 to give away. And as promised, we'll be giving away the whole lot to contestants. So we also wanted to give away as many prizes as we could. So we're going to be giving away a monthly prize, as well as the overall winner and a couple of runners-up prizes as well. So first, second, third, and fourth will all get a prize. First will get $100. Second will get $50. Third and fourth will get 20 each as well. So the monthly prize is going to be $20. So at the moment, we've got Daniel Angelis. He's in the lead, but he, I don't think, is paid up. So it's looking like Brett Rowlands, who I'm pretty sure is a Fulham fan. So it's looking like he's in pole position at the moment to be able to take out our first monthly prize. We'll be announcing that on the pod next week, so make sure you tune in, listeners. That wraps things up for today, though. So, look, again, thanks everyone for tuning in, either on YouTube or on the podcast. It's been great having you with us. Scotty, it's been great having you with us as well. Great to have you on the pod. Always great to have a new face on the panel. Don't forget, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also email us at mtagpodcast@gmail.com. And, of course, we're always on the socials, on Twitter and Facebook. And as I said at the top, make sure you either hit like, subscribe, send us a review or recommendation as well, because that helps us find a broader audience, and that's what we're trying to do here. So until next week, enjoy the